often people say to me, can you list all the things that went wrong and what did you do about it? And I find it really difficult to answer because you only learn from when things go wrong, not when things go right. And so I never see them. Your mind doesn't turn around and go, oh my God, that was a disaster. Even though it was, you went, oh my God, thank God that happened, because we now have these in place for it not to happen again.
Hello and welcome to You're in Charge, where we are helping you with starting your business journey by sharing stories and insights from the best in the biz. My name is Sab Pereira and you may know me from MasterChef Australia. And just a few months ago, I decided to leave my corporate job and go into the world of private chefing and working for myself in my own business. And it is true what they say, starting your own business is hard work. But the great thing is starting your business can also be incredibly rewarding, which is why I've teamed up with ThincHer at the University of Adelaide to learn a bit more about the business of doing business. Together, we will sit down with some trailblazing women and talk to them about the business behind their successes. I'm talking about the business of building confidence, the business of bouncing back, the business of brokering security, and the business of being you through it all. And today's guest is an icon of Australian entrepreneurship.
My name is Janine Allis. I am founder of Boost Juice Bars and mother of 4, and I have 2 dogs and cat.
But none of Janine's success happened overnight. Her story is one of grit, determination, and a relentless drive to succeed. So grab your pen and notebook because this is going to be a good one. Very, very exciting for me to be here, and thank you so much for joining You're in Charge. Before we actually get into your long and illustrious career, just want to ask, how are you? How are you going? What's life looking like these days for you?
I moved to the Northern Beaches about 3 years ago in Sydney. So my life is very much a very beach life, which is very nice. Suits me very well. I'm very happy with sand between my toes and wet hair. So it suits me beautifully.
I was in Bondi actually a couple of weeks ago, so I relate because I seriously contemplated, I think I want to move here at least for a little bit. So definitely relate because I'm from the tropics as well, so I definitely relate to that.
Yeah, but I don't understand why people don't just move. I don't understand why people just don't do it.
And like in Adelaide, I think we're spoiled because we do actually have quite a few nice beaches that are not too.
The beaches are beautiful in Adelaide.
It's so underrated, but also like don't kind of want people to know so it doesn't get overcrowded here. So
yeah, no, actually that's right. Adelaide's crap. Don't go.
Yeah, it's like no, we have no idea what you're talking about. Now, just to actually reflect on this amazing career that you've had, like I said, it's a huge fangirl moment for me as well because we've seen you on TV, we've seen all the things you have done and continue to do, and this is probably a big question to start off with, but just to actually ask you about any pivotal moments or things that actually stick out in your mind over this life of Boost Juice and Retail Zoo and your entire career that you think were big game changers for your business or how you went about conducting your business.
Sometimes there's not these big, hairy things that happen that change your business other than something like a COVID, which was a massive change. Business normally evolves, normally an evolution more than a revolution. COVID was a revolution, right? So COVID took a nice even evolution of people working from home sometimes or thinking differently or saving money using Zooms or doing podcasts like this to that would have maybe happened in about 10, 15 years to bang, it has to happen now. Everyone throws a lot of money at it and bang. So that's a revolution. That's a smash it up and start. But mostly businesses evolve. And if you're not evolving, if you're not thinking that if there's a better way, you'll find it, then your business goes south. So there's probably very few moments like you sort of go, okay, I'm going to launch internationally. Well, that's not like one day you're international and one day you aren't. It's more a we're going to do it, and then the planning process starts, and then you start to go over there. So that I'm going to go international could take 4 years to actually execute it. So it's not like a big boom. This is what's happened. But I think fundamentally you always have to go, if there's a better way, I'll find it.
Yeah. And because speaking about COVID, I just actually want to touch on that because the business, especially Boost, it is retail, and that's where literally all of your business is done. That's where all the money is made. So that would have been a huge, like, I know it was a big impact on a lot of the world and how business is run, but if you can tell us a little bit about how you actually, like, essentially survived, I think, for a lot of businesses during that time more than actually thriving. How did that work with Boost, especially being like so retail focused?
Yeah. Look, it was what happens, people like certainty. Everyone likes certainty. And so suddenly we were thrown into an era that we've never been to before, well, not in our generation or not in our parents' generation. Our parents' generation had different challenges, which was wars, etc. So our challenge was COVID. Now, and COVID went for 3 years, a war goes for a year, and yeah, there was death. So it was our equivalent to that type of stress and scenario. I don't think it's as bad though. Just for anyone watching about the war, I don't think it was as bad as that. But look, you go from living your day, talking about budgets, talking about growth, talking about opportunities to overnight, you're talking about cash preservation and survival. And so that was and I was on boards of retailers at the time, and it was pretty hectic because the business I was on the board of Michael Hill as well, and they had businesses overseas. And so at that stage, the majority of our business was in Australia, even though we did have some in Singapore. So it was very much whoa, how are we going to get through this one? And it was only one, we didn't know at the time, like all of us, we didn't know how deadly it was, if we could open, if we could not open. So there was a lot of things to consider during this period. And, it really was survival. It was the first time I thought, right, okay, I don't have an answer for that, and it was only through government funding, government support, and rules coming in for landlords that got retailers through. But then, but everyone had a story. Like my girlfriend's an actress, and there was very little support for the entertainment industry. There's people who were limo drivers. There was no work for them at all. And so everyone had their challenges, and then there was wings in there. There was people who did social media that suddenly were flying. There was people on e-commerce were suddenly pivoting, and suddenly their business never been stronger. So it was a real a mishmash of a lot of losses and a lot of successes. But I think the most interesting thing with this was it wasn't that it affected just small businesses or just medium businesses or just large businesses. It actually affected large to small. So, for example, Flight Centre, right? They had $25 million worth of expenses a week.
Wow.
With zero income.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So it wasn't just, oh, gee, this hurts us little people. It was across the board everywhere. It was
an equalizer. Yeah. In many ways.
It really was.
Yeah. And it's not just like you said, not just, you need to keep people employed. You need to keep your business going. It's also like your entire supply chain was disrupted as well for a lot of, I think, hospitality and retail, because you have imports coming in. You've got suppliers coming in from overseas, and a lot of things had to completely change. So what a wild time, now that you think about it.
Yeah, and we're humans, right? We move on. That was yesterday, and today's today, and off we go. But, I think, history will show photos of people walking around with masks and Melbourne, there was, Adelaide wasn't too bad.
No, we barely had anything. Yeah.
Yeah. But, you live in Melbourne. It was one of the most locked down cities in the world. And it was, this children going back to school were highly affected. I had a girlfriend who was a teacher that the children just didn't socialize.
Yeah. And they didn't graduate properly. Yeah.
No, there was a lot of mental health issues in Melbourne. I know of older people who committed suicides because they were pretty much left and no one could go see them. So there was, so particularly for Melbourne, it was pretty horrific.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking about mental health actually brings me to the next part of what I actually really wanted to discuss, which is, I think, like when you are a woman, resilience it looks different to how you experience and build resilience. I think it's different when you are a woman because of the unique experiences that you go through being a mum and being, a wife, a daughter, a sister. And, obviously you need the resilience in business. But in terms of how your sort of unique resilience, how does that work in line with how you do business, and how does it flow through to your business is what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah. Look, it's interesting, because I don't go, I need resilience to do this. I just do it. So you just go, I don't see it as, oh, as a woman, I have all these challenges and I need resilience for it. I just get on with it, right? So I had 3 little kids at home starting a business, and, you had challenges, you just sort it out every day. You had to get kids to school, you had to sort your business out, and you had to do everything. And you didn't stop to go, oh, this is hard, because no one will listen. And you didn't go, oh, I can't do it, because that can't wasn't an option. So you just got on with it. And at no point did I go, gee, this is hard because I'm a woman, or, there was moments where it was difficult, but it was not because of, it was just because it was difficult. So I think that grit is something that is underestimated. I mean, you can actually, that perseverance and grit, if you can get those 2 things going, no matter what sex you are or orientation, it is really all about just keep going and just get knocked down, pick up, find a solution to it and keep going.
Which also then brings into us, because you talked about, having the setbacks and failures. Are there any sort of like distinct moments where you have gone, oh, this is actually really not working for the brand, for the business, and it has actually been a bit of a problem where you've had to go, okay, we need to completely reframe what we're doing? Like any examples?
Yeah, look, the hard thing about that question is that it happens every day. So it's not like you have one incident and you do that. It's a constant. You're doing it all the time. And so often people say to me, can you list all the things that went wrong and what did you do about it? And I find it really difficult to answer, because you only learn from when things go wrong, not when things go right.
Yeah.
And so I never see them. Your mind doesn't turn around and go, oh my God, that was a disaster. Even though it was, you went, oh my God, thank God that happened, because we now have these in place for it not to happen again. I learned to, fire fast, so, if you've got the wrong people, to not just put up with it. And I learned, to read contracts more effectively. So, and the only way I'm good at those things is because I did it wrong. And so, as I said before, and I think this is a really important point, the only time you learn is when things go wrong. You don't learn from anything that goes right.
It's that
because that goes right. So you go,
yeah,
no. And it's true. You go, okay, I made a cake, right? It was right. I just made the cake. You don't think about it anymore. The cake's made. But if the cake is a disaster, you go, oh, okay, next time I need to add baking powder.
Yeah, yeah. I relate to that because that's my background, because I was a master chef and then decided to start my own business, and it's very much you learn from all the things you didn't do and things you could have done better. And I think I saw somewhere, I can't remember who said that quote, but it's about you learn to fail better each time, which I thought was a really interesting way of looking at it. But there's also that cliche of failures are the pillars of success, which is a very old saying.
And you also find the firsts of everything are really hard. Like the first time there was litigation, the first time, I had to fire someone, the first time someone stole from me, the first time, the first of everything's really hit you hard, right? They kind of go, whoa, what did I do? And how did that happen? And poor me. And you go down sort of that path. But once you sort of have quite a few firsts, you then go, wow, that's unfortunate. Okay, that's all right. I move on, and I know that there's a reason for that, and there'll be a better outcome in the future for it.
Yep. And it's just, I think it's easy to sort of be disillusioned, like, oh, everything's going to be great. And I think that's where, because we do have a lot of people that'll be listening in that are doing startups, that are in entrepreneurship and business for the first time. And I think those are hard pills to swallow, that like until you have to swallow them, you don't realize that that's the reality of the world.
I think you just sort of look at them as a course, right? I did a course in baking a cake, right? And the course was that I need to make sure that I measured the ingredients instead of just chucking them in and just hoping for the best, right? Or the course is that I don't put the oven on too high, or whatever that course that you have to do, and that course costs you money, right? So, and sometimes the more expensive the course, the better the lesson, and you won't do it again.
Yes. And I love that analogy because it speaks to me on like a very, very fundamental level because it's to do with cooking. Now, Boost and actually the entire, well, all the businesses that you oversee and you as a brand, it's big, it's huge. And like, even if people may not necessarily know your name, which I think is not true, people will know Boost straight away. And it's so pervasive. Like we know, like I know the colors of Boost in my mind when I think about it. Like it's just so, it's big, it's massive, and it's international as well. So having gone through to that level and scaled up, tell us a bit about actually bringing staff on board. And I know there's like the ethos and the values of the business that, you filter through to all like retail staff down to upper management and whoever. But how does that work in terms of your values and that value system that you then make sure carries through to the entire business? What does that look like?
Look, the thing is though, as the business gets bigger, you can't instill your values onto everyone because every time unfortunately, as it gets bigger, you need more people. So you need to, have layers. But the key thing is that you have to hire people with your values.
Yeah.
Right? They need to have different skills, but fundamentally they need to have the same sort of grit and values. And you need to then instill on them the type of people they need to hire. And they will hire people of the same type of values. And then if you continue to do that and keep to that, then you find you have a great culture in business. And then you have a culture of, this is our bar and we can't go below this bar. And if you have that culture, then you're halfway there.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason that I ask is because I come from a corporate background, and you do sort of get told, oh, it's got a great culture, but then you find out perhaps not the greatest culture. It's not what you were told. And the culture is such a massive thing. And I think when it comes to like that sort of setting, how do you ensure that like, there's the levels to it that you explained that, you've got people that you've got your values that you've passed on, and then it works in like a bit like a tiered system. But in terms of like staff retention and like you've got your retail staff, which are technically, your frontline staff, I think a big part of like any business is when you've got the people on the front line, they need to feel valued and like appreciated, because that's a huge piece because they are technically making the money for you in day to day. What does that look like for Boost? Like in terms of like, what do you have in place? And if you are allowed to actually tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, look, we do things like we don't necessarily for summer and stuff. We don't necessarily recruit one by one. We do things like inductions, and people come together and they basically play games. We have a really fun session, and we play various games. And in the games you find out who the leader is, who the followers, who's the analytical thinker,
Gotcha.
who's the we were looking for those energetic, fun people,
Yeah.
right? So. And then it's sort of a matter of, making sure we have the right managers. Like, someone said to me, how do I motivate my team? I said, it's really easy, right? You ready? Here it is. Hire motivated people, right? It's not more complicated than that. A culture isn't something that you put on a wall and go, this is our culture and it's done, it's done. It's the people you put into your culture. And if your culture is really precious to you and someone has great skills, but they don't fit the culture, well, then maybe you need to make a call.
Yeah. And I think, just based on like what you just said, it's like, if you think about Boost, especially as a brand, it has that very much. It's very young, it's very hip, it's very cool. And I mean, kudos to you because that actually carries through. Like it's so seamless. It carries through regardless of whether you're having Boost in Adelaide or Boost in Brisbane or wherever. So kudos to you, honestly, because that's amazing. It's like I said, I'm fangirling over here. So that's actually quite amazing. Now, another thing we just want to touch on, and this is to do with the fact that a lot of our audience are young entrepreneurs, and especially young women that, out of high school going into uni, and having had this amazing career that you've had, I have no doubt that what success looked like to you at the beginning is perhaps different to what it is now. So what is success now for you versus how it was 20 years ago?
Yeah, look, success is various depending on where you are in your life. So when I was younger, success was winning the grand final in netball, right? So that's all I want to do is just win my netball grand final, right? And then when you're in business, success is not losing my family home, right? And then it gets later as success is, doing an agreement in an international market. So success, it depends on what your goal is at the time, dictates your success. That's in business. But really success in life, I know it gets as simple as this, is just happiness. And what does happiness mean to you?
Yeah.
And happiness, I've got 4 kids. Happiness is having those 4 kids happy and wanting to hang out with me, Or, success is being able to surf every morning and being able to be half decent at it, So success isn't a number.
Yeah.
Success isn't if I make $1 million, I am successful, right? That's not success, because really the greatest joy is actually quite often it's for free. Make sure you pick the right partner. For God's sake, that's success. Is looking down at an old wrinkled hand in your hand and being happy with the journey you've had. That's success. A dollar figure is not success. Dollar figure is not happiness. Dollar figure gives you freedom, and dollar figure gives you choices.
Yeah.
So that's what's important about money. It gives you choices, but it doesn't make you happy.
Yeah. That's super insightful, actually, because I think often, like, you do find that people will attach that dollar figure to, it's like, yep, that's what I need to achieve to, consider myself accomplished and successful. And I think it's really valuable for our listeners to hear that, because it takes so many different forms in different parts of life. And especially when you're like new to business, like I am. It's only this year that I decided to throw myself into it full time. So it's very much a learning thing. So how I define success is so different to someone who's been, who's got 20 years of skin in the game. So I really like that you said, it's about like choosing the right people for you, the person for you, who you're around, but also just coming back to you, actually. Tell me a little bit about like your day to day, like things that actually bring you joy, whether it's in your work day or when being the fabulous Janine Allis around about town, whatever it is that you got to do. Tell me a little bit about the things that bring you joy.
Well, probably the thing that honestly brings me joy, like true joy, is my alarm goes off at 5 o'clock in the morning. By 6 o'clock, I'm in the water, right? And there is something about watching the sunrise in a wetsuit, paddling the board into the surf, and hanging out there with a whole bunch of people I really like and laughing. And then the real joy is when you get great waves, right? So it pretty much is the pinnacle of joy. And then after that, my husband will come and meet me, we'll go for a walk, and we'll solve all the problems of the world. So my mornings are my joy. And then you come back and you do a bit more exercise, and then you start your day. Now, that means that my day starts very early. That pretty much means I'm a very boring person at night, because pretty much at 8:30, I'm like, see ya.
It's sleepy, yeah.
I'm the standard joke. If you come for dinner with me, it's at 5:30.
It's probably not a mad thing, to be honest, early dinner and then early start, because like that's something I need to learn, because I tend to burn the candle at both ends.
Yeah, and we had periods in our life that we do that, and it's literally been only probably the last, 4 years, 3 years that I've been really doing a 5 o'clock. But it's because I live in an area where the sun rises early and I'm on a beach and there's stuff to do. So, when I was living in Melbourne, there was less stuff to do. So there was less reason to jump out of bed.
And probably more work as well, because you sort of like the environment that you're in as well, I think kind of like really sculpts your day. Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Fabulous. Now, this is a little fun little question out there. I have no doubt that you're very good at very many things, but tell us something that you want to absolutely master. Can literally be anything. By I would say in 12 months' time. Yeah, what would you want to master?
Okay. I know it's sort of like, I know we're on a surfing theme, but I surf something called a longboard, which means it's about a 9-1 surfboard. And and when people who surf longboards, they look beautiful on them. They look graceful and they look like they dance on the board. Okay. I don't look like that. Like, I look a bit more like a thumping elephant on my surf. So what I'd love to master is the elegance of surfing a longboard and being able, it's something called cross step, where you put your one foot in front of the other. Whenever I do that, I basically fall off the board either in the front or the back. And I look horrific, like a kook. So mastering that would be very good. That would be a highlight. I think it's interesting because people ask me to talk or podcasts and they think that I'm an expert and they come on as an expert in business. But really the honest truth is that I'm a student and I will forever be a student. And I will always be able to learn something from you, Sav, or something from my son, or something from the next person. And I think that if you live your life on knowledge or wanting knowledge or sourcing knowledge or understanding that you're never going to get there and there's always something more to learn, then it makes life worth living and it makes life really interesting. But the people who say, I am an expert, are the ones that actually can never be an expert, because by the time they say those words, innovations happen, and they're so no longer an expert.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like that's very reflective of, like, you look at like what you said about being able to grow and learn, like then speaks back to when you spoke about the experiences of, having to see the business through COVID. But then also Boost having been a brand that's been around for 20 plus years now, 2 decades. And that takes so much hard work, but it also just in the last 20 years, you think about how much technology has changed, how fast tech has grown, and having to completely adapt your systems to that.
Well, look, when I first started Boost, internet was barely just starting. Really, it was just starting, and there was all these tech guys that told me all the things I could do, but it was the whole world of promising the world and never delivering. And so, no, you're right. But I'm always an early adopter. If there's a better way of doing it, I'll find it. And so it has been a real journey to try and get tech to a point where it actually now works, which is really refreshing.
Love that. Where it actually does what it's supposed to do. And I think I'm sure you know about this. In psychology, there's something called the Big Five model. And it measures all these different personality traits. And one thing it measures and it's the most accepted model of like how you measure traits within people. And one of the traits is openness to experience. And just based on this conversation that you've had, not just about your business, but like about you surfing, because you didn't start off surfing, did you? I knew you were like quite sporty, but like the surfing's a new thing.
Yeah, no, 40. I've only been surfing for a few years. So if I started when I was 40, well, actually now quite a few years now.
But later in life though, because it's not like you were doing it since you were 5 years old. So, which is amazing because I'm so scared of surfing. Like I love snorkeling, love scuba diving, but I couldn't surf. Probably because I'm also scared about looking like a little baby whale just flopping about. And it's amazing to see that trait in you just based on this conversation, and just to see that it's in practice just based on, because the proof is very much in that pudding for you about looking at your business. Anyone can look up the stats on Boost and see how it's done, and it's all public information. But that proof is there. So I think it's just marvelous to see that openness that you have, whether it's technology and whether it's learning new things and finding better ways. And I think that's such a massive takeaway for anyone who's listening, just being open to learning. I think that's such a valuable thing. And I think that's pretty much, all the things that we wanted to cover. But yeah, just wanted to say if there were any parting words of wisdom that you had for me or our listeners and everyone.
Look, I don't know if there's any sort of parting words of wisdom, but I think a couple of things. First of all, being kind to yourself. in business, we tend to be really tough. Things go wrong all the time, right? And then also probably the other thing is guilt. Guilt doesn't serve you, whether you're a mother or not a mother or you're a girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever you are to people. The vortex of business will suck you into it, right? And so you just do what you can do the best you can do. And there's sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong, but be kind to yourself. I think that's the key thing and I don't know if I was that kind to myself. I don't think I looked after my health, nor did I look after myself very well. And I think that in hindsight, I think that's a really important thing to do.
Yeah. I think the newer generation's gotten better at it because I'm in my 30s now and I find myself like the whole self-kindness piece came to me when I was about 2 years ago. So when I was about 29. So that didn't start really happening to me going, oh my God, I'm actually being quite self-destructive and I need to stop. But I think the younger generation's actually getting a lot better at it.
They are, but sometimes you actually need to go hard or go off home.
That's very true. Like you just can't yeah.
Like between 30 and 40, I seriously did not put my head up to breathe, but I couldn't have done what I did without it. So it's sort of like that balance of, yes, it's nice to have life balance. Thank God I have it now. But there was a period where you just go.
You just got to go hell for leather. Yeah.
Yeah. You do. If you're an Olympian, you want to go to the Olympics, then you need to, watch your diet, don't go out, train every morning. You do need to sacrifice. If you want to be the best you can be, something has to give.
It doesn't come easy.
No.
Yeah. Perfect.
And if anyone could do it, it was easy, but anyone could do it.
That's true. And it just goes to show there aren't many Janine Allises in the world. There's only one of you and very few people, that are like you as well, which is why I said huge fangirl. So this has been amazing for me. But just want to say thank you. Thank you so much. I have learned just in this little chat, I've learned so much and there's so much thought-provoking that you provided. So I have no doubt our listeners feel the same way. But just want to say a big thank you for being a part of You're in Charge.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
What an incredible conversation that was. I'm still a little bit starstruck having spoken to Janine and how much valuable insight that she shared with us today. And for me personally, what really stuck with me was the piece about guilt, because for me, I find that I do actually feel guilty about having to make hard decisions, and it's a big part of, I think, being a woman in business that you do have to constantly defend your decisions and what you choose to do, not just for yourself, but for also your business. And I think having someone so impressive that is doing so well in the world of business and entrepreneurship, like Janine saying that guilt is counterproductive, was something that I definitely needed to hear. And that's going to be a mindset that I think I'm going to carry with me now when I dive headfirst into running my own business. Here at You're in Charge, we are all about you and your business. So if this chat with Janine has inspired you as it has inspired me, definitely tell us. Search for ThincLab, that's ThincLab on all the socials, and leave us a comment. Or email us at thinkher@adelaide.edu.au. All the links and info you'll need are now in our show notes. Make sure you hit follow and share this show with your friends, because next episode, we are getting personal with content creator and self-starting businesswoman Brooke Upton.
It was in some of my classes that I was sitting there and there was kind of a few aha moments where I was like, you know what, I can apply this same structure to the way that I would be branding businesses and marketing businesses to myself. I myself am a brand kind of with legs, with a heartbeat, and the same principles apply.
You're in Charge is brought to you by ThincHer, an initiative of ThincLab at the University of Adelaide. Google ThincHer, that's ThincHer, to join our empowering community of like-minded women in business. You're in Charge was recorded on Kaurna land. We acknowledge the Kaurna people, the original custodians of the Adelaide Plains, and the land on which the University of Adelaide's campuses at North Terrace, Waite and Roseworthy are built.